Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third part of our Module 1 discussion of the e-learning session ISO 9001 2015 and Lead Auditor. In this part, we are going to discuss on the annexure that is related to the ISO 9001 2015 standards. ISO 9001 2015 standard includes an Annexure A, as there have been changes in the structure, terminology, and concepts used in the standard. So there is a need to explain these changes so that the quality management system implementation teams can better understand why the changes were made and what they are intended to accomplish. Annexure A is entitled Clarification of New Structure, Terminology, and Concepts, and this is exactly what it does. It gives further explanation on some of the changes and updates to the ISO 9001 standard. Annexure A is split into 8 sections ideally that give further explanation, which we would explain in coming slides. Annexure A is entitled Clarification of New Structure, Terminology, and Concepts. And this is exactly what it does. It gives further explanation on some of the changes and updates to ISO 9001. So let us now try to understand what are these 8 sections or clauses and what does it mean. A1. A1 talks about the structure and terminology. In this section, the annexure explains that the structure of the clauses is meant to be clearer. It is not intended to dictate how the documented information is to be organized or that terms already in use need to change or not. A2, Products and Service. This section explains that although ISO 9001-2008 used the term product to mean both product and services, the ISO 9001-2015 standard uses products and services throughout the standard to highlight that there is a difference between products and services in the application of the requirements. A3, Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. This section specifies that even though ISO 9001-2015 demands that you identify the requirements of interested parties, it is the company that decides if a requirement of an interested party is relevant to the quality management system. A4, Risk-based thinking. While this seems to be a new concept in the ISO 9001 standard, it has been considered around the quality community for years and has been implicit in various editions of ISO 9001. A6, Documented information. The annexure explains that the term documented information has come into use to align ISO 9001 with other management system standards rather than using separate terms like documented procedures or records. A7 talks about organizational knowledge. This annexure explains how organizational knowledge is meant to address the need for organizations to manage the knowledge necessary to safeguard the organizations from loss of knowledge and ensure the acquisition of organizational knowledge. A8. Control of externally provided processes, products, and services. In this section, it is explained that the requirements of the main standard, which we discussed in clause 8.4, are intended to be applicable to purchasing from suppliers, arrangements with associated companies, and outsourcing processes to external providers. Why is Annexure A so important? Annexure A does not include any requirements for a quality management system, so it is often overlooked as unimportant by many who are implementing ISO 9001. However, it is important to remember that this part of the standard is there to better explain the concepts that are included in the requirement and can help one to make sure that you have properly interpreted what the requirements are intended to say or depict. Generic documents required for ISO certification. Just as an example, we will first talk about mandatory documents. Mandatory document includes the scope of the total quality management system of the organization, the quality policy, the quality objectives, criteria for evaluating and selection of suppliers. Please note that records marked with all this are very, very important and are mandatory documents for the organization. Next, coming to mandatory records, monitoring and measuring equipment calibration records, records of training, skills, experience, and qualification, product service requirements review records, record about design and development output records, records about design and development inputs, records of design and development inputs, records of design and development controls, records of design and development outputs, design and development record changes, and rather design and development changes records, and characteristics of product to be produced and service to be provided, and records about customer property. Few more mandatory records: production or service provision change control records, record of conformity of product and service with acceptance criteria, record of non-conforming output, monitoring and measurement results, internal audit program, results of the internal audit performed, results of the management reviews performed, and result of all the corrective or preventive actions. Non-mandatory documents could include procedure for determining context of the organization and interested parties, procedure for addressing risks and opportunities, procedure for competence training and awareness, procedure for equipment maintenance and measuring equipment, procedure for document and record control, sales procedure, procedure for design and development, procedure for production and service provision, warehousing procedure, procedure for management of non-conformities and corrective actions, procedure for monitoring customer satisfaction, procedure for internal audit, and procedure for management review. Relationship between ISO 9001-2015 and ISO 9004-2018. ISO 9001 and 9004 are both part of the ISO 9000 family of standards. These standards, even though they are both about quality management systems, they have some important aspects that differentiate them. Many organizations, when seeking to establish or improve a quality management system, tend to get confused about which standard to use or if they should use both or not. In exploring 9001 and 9004, rather ISO 9001 and ISO 9004, the main difference between them could be highlighted towards purpose of both: certification process, certification focus, and continual improvement for both. There are many differences between both these standards. However, what is important to understand is they are both intended to be used by any organization, regardless of their size and nature, to establish and improve their quality management system. ISO 9001 is intended for certification, and ISO 9004 is not. And ISO 9001 is focused mainly on customer satisfaction, where ISO 9004 has a broader focus that includes all stakeholders in order to achieve sustained success. ISO 9001 compatibility with other standards. ISO 45001, Occupational Health and Safety Management System, was intentionally developed to be compatible with ISO 9001 quality and ISO 14001, which talks about the environmental improvements. Management system standards for easier integration of quality, environmental and occupational health and safety management systems by organizations. But what are the integration options? There are three primary options the organization must choose between: maintaining two separate systems, ISO 9001 and 14001 or 45001, partially integrated systems, and fully integrated systems. Comparison between ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 and ISO 45001. ISO 9001 is a quality management system which gives organization a systematic approach for meeting customer objectives. ISO 14001 is an environmental management system which provides a system for measuring and improving an organization's environmental impact. And ISO 5001 is an occupational health and safety management which provides a system for measuring and improving an organization's health and safety impact. ISO 9001 and ISO 27001. Similarly to ISO 9001, ISO 27001 is the internationally recognized standard for information security management. It is the mostly widely used ISMS standard in the world, with over 35,000 certificates issued to organizations across 178 countries. A brief overview a brief overview of the main clauses and the similarities, context of the organization, interested parties, responsibilities and authorities, competence, awareness, communication and documented information, internal audit and management review, and non-conformity and corrective action. Relation between ISO 9001 and 20001. ISO 9001, as we know, is the standard that sets out the requirements for a quality management system. It helps businesses and organizations to be more efficient and improve customer satisfaction. The standard is based on the idea of continual improvement and define how the technology forge can meet the requirements of our customers and other stakeholders. ISO 20001 is an IT service management standard. It specifies requirements for the technology forge to plan, establish, monitor, implement, operate, review, maintain, and improve the service management system. Legal compliance on ISO 9001 standards. ISO compliance refers to ISO 9001, a quality management standard used by organizations to prove that they provide services and or products that meet certain requirements. These requirements are regulated by the ISO 9000 series, which is the only quality standard that businesses can aspire to. ISO 9000 is a series of standards to ensure that a business is upholding and working towards improvement, or rather working towards improved quality in every aspect of their business. This set of standards is used as a quality management system to provide the best practices and services to the client. The ISO 9001 standard in particular requires certification. ISO 9001 is not a legal requirement, although recognized as important in many industries. Company may operate without that certification also. This certification does not help in maintaining many legal requirements that companies face to ensure quality, but the standard itself is not required. ISO 9001 is followed by a significant number of companies in many countries across the world. It allows companies to maintain high standard of quality assurance and is recognized as an important indicator of a company's commitment to running their business in an efficient manner. ISO 9001 is the only standard in the ISO 9000 series that requires a certification. ISO 9000 defines the standards for quality management, and ISO 9001 maps out the requirements for meeting these standards. While many companies abide by these principles, ISO 9001 is not a legal requirement, as I said earlier, to operate a business. Many companies do benefit from being ISO 9001 certified. The ISO 9001 quality management system focuses on meeting customer requirements, customer needs, and overall customer satisfaction, rather than just adhering to product specifications and requirements. That's because Ultimately, the quality of your products depends on whether how well they meet the customer's expectations and customer needs. At the center of the ISO 9001, there are 8 key principles of quality management. Number one, customer focus, leadership, involvement of employees in the organization. Always there should be a focus on the process and process improvement, a systematic and a structured way of approach to the management, continual improvement. That means do an improvement and sustain that improvement, a factual approach to decision making, and a proper relationship management with all proper stakeholders. With this, we come to a close of part 3 of the module 1 discussion. Further discussions we will have in module 2 till module 9, one after the other. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to module 2 of learning of ISO 9001 2015 and lead auditor. In this module, we are going to discuss the audit process, types, and evidence review. If we want to define the audit as a subject, auditing is defined as the on-site verification activity such as inspection or examination of a process or quality system to ensure compliance to different requirements. An audit can apply to an entire organization or might be specific to a function, process, or production step. ISO 19011-2018 defines an audit as a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining audit evidence. Now, this audit evidence includes records, statement of fact, or other information which are relevant and, of course, verifiable, and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria, which basically includes a set of policies, procedures, or requirements, are really fulfilled. There are 3 main types of audits. One, process audit. This type of audit verifies that processes are working within established limits within the organization. It evaluates an operation or method against predetermined instructions or standards to measure conformance to these standards and the effectiveness of the instruction. Product audit. This type of audit is an examination of a particular product or service, such as hardware, processed material, or software, to evaluate whether it conforms to requirements. What do I mean by conformance to requirements? That is, the specifications, performance standards, and customer requirements, whether conforming to those or not. System audit. System audit is an audit conducted on a management system. It can be described as a documented activity performed to verify by examination and evaluation of objective evidence that applicable elements of the system are appropriate and effective and have been developed, documented, and implemented in accordance and in conjunction with the specified requirements. Audit definitions and consideration. What do I mean by audit definition and consideration? There are many points as we can see over here, and we will discuss each and every one by one. First one, desk or document review audit. Desk audit means a review of a written audit report and its supporting documents by a qualified auditor, together with the auditor's written findings and recommendations. Desk audit means the review of materials submitted upon request to the department or its agents for quality assurance activities. Audit documentation also facilitates the planning, performance, and supervision of the engagement and is the basis for the review of the quality of the work because it provides the reviewer with written documentation of the evidence supporting the auditor's significant conclusion. Next, department audit. The purpose of auditing a department is to provide insight into a department's and organization's culture, policies, procedures, and aids board and management oversight by verifying internal controls such as operating effectiveness, risk mitigation controls, and compliance with any relevant laws or regulations. Internal or external audit. Audit alludes to a process of independent checking of financial or process records of an organization so as to give an opinion on the various criteria or statements that is happening in an organization. It can be ideally grouped into two categories, namely internal audit and external audit. Internal audit is not compulsory by nature but can be conducted to review the operational activities of the organization. In this type of auditing, the work area is determined by the entity's management. On the contrary, external audit, which is obligatory for every separate and specific legal entity, where a third party is brought to the organization to perform the process of audit and give its opinion on the process or financial statements of the company. Here, the working scope is determined by the respective statute. First party audit. A first party audit is an internal audit conducted by auditors who are employed by the organization being audited, but who have no vested interest in the audit results of the area being audited. A first audit, the first party audit occurs when an audit is performed within your organization by your own auditing resource. This is often called ideally an internal audit. Second party audit. A second party audit is performed by a supplier, a customer, or contractor, often against the proprietary requirements. Third party audit. A third party audit is performed by an independent body, that is, a registrar such as assessors against a recognized standards, as we know, ISO 9001. Performance audit. A performance audit is an independent assessment of an entity's operations to determine if specific programs or functions are working as intended to achieve stated goals. Performance audits are typically associated with government agencies at all levels, as most government bodies receive federal funding. Compliance and conformance audits. An organization must periodically evaluate its compliance with legal and other requirements like compliance obligations applicable to its environmental aspects to ensure the commitment to compliance articulated in its environmental policy statement. It must also conduct periodic conformance audits of its QMS or quality management system to ensure that the system is constructed and functioning in accordance with the ISO standard. While compliance is more formal and legal requirement, conformance is voluntary. Conformance refers to the norms, expectations, standards, and policies that a company abides by. This may be established by a company itself or by any other organization. Finally, follow-up audit. Follow-up audit is an audit which verifies that corrective actions have been accomplished as scheduled. It determines that the actions are effective in preventing or minimizing future recurrence. Usually, a follow-up audit includes a follow-up review and a follow-up report. Audit definitions. Now we will discuss about 4 phases of an audit and 2 related actions. Regarding the 4 phases of an audit, the first phase is audit planning and preparation, which is very self-explanatory. Second, audit execution. The execution of the phase of an audit is often called the field work. Audit reporting. The purpose of the audit report is to communicate the results of the investigation. Audit follow-up and closure. According to ISO 19011, clause 6.6, the audit is completed when all the planned audit activities have been carried out or otherwise agreed with the audit client. Regarding the 2 actions, I will first talk about corrective action. What is a corrective action? A corrective action is an action taken to eliminate the causes of an existing non-conformity or defect or other undesirable situation in order to prevent recurrence, that is reactive. And what is a preventive action? Preventive action is action taken to eliminate the causes of a potential non-conformity, defect, or other undesirable situation in order to prevent occurrence, that is proactive. Audit objectives. What are the audit objectives? The aim: to monitor effectiveness of quality management system and its implementation appropriately in the organization, to identify potential problems, to identify areas of improvement towards the process. What are the benefits? The benefits: audit gives an early warning system if something is going wrong in the process. It helps towards timely corrective and preventive actions, and it is a learning from experience. Audit always is an independent and impartial investigation. It is system-oriented, not people-oriented. It's a fact-finding exercise. Audit is not any time a fault-finding exercise. And it's a mirror for the organizations to see how the organization is doing towards the process perspective. What are the different principles of auditing? The different principles of auditing starts with a planning. An auditor should plan his work to complete his work efficiently and well within time. with proper honesty. An auditor must have impartial attitude and should be free from any interest within the organization. Having proper secrecy maintained, an auditor should keep confidential all the information acquired by him during the audit. Audit evidence. An auditor should adhere to substantive and compliance procedure for collecting audit evidences before conducting an audit. Internal control system. It is the primary responsibility of a company to keep adequate internal control system in their respective organizations. Skill and competency. Skill and competence, rather. Audit should be done by trained, experienced, and competent persons, and audit staff should be updated with all the developments in accounting, auditing, process-related matters, legal rules, and regulations as amended from time to time. Work done by others. An auditor is permitted to rely on work done by others, but he should exercise due diligence when referring to it. He should mention the sources of references thereof in his report. What are the working papers? An auditor should prepare and preserve all the necessary documents as obtained during his audit. These documents can be used by him as audit evidences. What is the legal framework? All business activities should be run adhering to the rules and regulations stipulated in the legal framework of the organization. This is to safeguard the interests and rights of the interested parties involved. Audit report. On the basis of the review and assessment of the audit evidences, auditor should express his opinion regarding the financial and process-related happening or statements of an organization. Types of audit. First, we will talk about internal audits. Internal audits are audits that are performed by the organization and are a self-examination of the organization's quality management system performed on site. Internal audits have many benefits, including preparing the organization for external audits. The internal auditor must be independent of the area being audited to ensure objective results. It is recommended to have more than one auditor to ensure no one is auditing his or her area of responsibilities. External audits include customer, supplier, certification, and surveillance. A customer audit is where an existing or potential customer audits the organization to verify if one can or are meeting their requirements, or rather, whether they are eligible to meet the requirements of the customer. If one is auditing an existing or potential supplier, he or she shall consider this as a supplier audit. A certification audit is an audit where the selected register would conduct to verify conformance against ISO 9001 standards before they issue the official ISO 9001 certificate. Certification audits are most often broken into two stages, Stage 1 audit and Stage 2 audit. This we will discuss again in some other module in details. After certification, a registrar would check up on the periodically using surveillance audits to verify one is still upholding the QMS and the ISO requirements or not. Surveillance audits are very much like certification audits. The exception that they are not issuing or reissuing a certificate. These are typically conducted by the registrar annually. Auditors. Again, we will first talk about internal auditors. The main job of an internal auditor is to identify problems and correct them before they are discovered during an external audit by an outside firm or regulatory agencies such as the Securities and Exchange Commission. An internal audit generally performs three tasks which we will discuss now. Number one, assess any risks and the internal controls within a company. Ensure that a company and its employees are in compliance with federal and state laws and regulations as applicable for the organization. Make suggestions as to what needs to be done to rectify a failed audit or issues that were identified as problematic during the audit. The Institute of Internal Auditor, established in 1941 and headquartered in Florida, US, is the international professional organization that sets the standards, guidance, best practices, and code of ethics for the practitioners. These are basically called they define the requirements for internal auditors. What are the benefits of an internal auditor? Many companies choose to employ an internal auditor despite not being legally obligated to do so. Robust internal audits are viewed as a key to correct issues quickly, maintain a good reputation, and prevent money from being wasted. Benefits of an internal auditor. Many companies choose to employ an internal auditor despite not being legally obligated to do so, as I said earlier. Robust internal audits are viewed as a key to correct issues quickly, maintain a good reputation, and prevent money from being wasted. Internal auditor versus external auditor. As I discussed earlier, internal auditors are hired by the company, while external auditors are appointed probably by a shareholder's vote or others. Now, what is an external auditor? External auditor is an independent, third-party professional who performs an impartial review of the records of an organization. It could be financial, it could be process-related records. They are responsible for examining their client accounts and financial and process statements and preparing impartial reports of the findings, including any irregularities. Now we will start discussion on the roles and responsibilities of an auditor. As per ISO 9001. So what are the different auditors' responsibilities? Number one, evaluate constantly the effects of audit observations and personal interactions during an audit. Treat concerned personnel in a way that will best achieve the audit purpose. Perform the audit process without deviating due to distraction. Commit full attention and support to the audit process. React effectively in stressful situations. Arrive at generally acceptable conclusions based on audit observations, remain true to a conclusion despite pressure to change that is not based on evidence. One thing we have to very clearly understand in an audit, that during an audit, one of the good quality of an auditor is that you should not dump anything on the auditee. You have to convince people that there is some problem in your process, as because I am telling you I am an auditor or I am a lead auditor, that's why I am telling you you have to change. That will not be very well accepted all the time. So, what you people have to do, ideally, we have to convince the people. That is, if you do it this way, these are the benefits that you will achieve in your process and ultimately to your product and services. So, after a person gets convinced, he or she will be able to incorporate the changes that you suggest in a proper way. Role of an internal auditor. The internal auditor role is normally staffed by several experienced employees from throughout the organization. The purpose of the internal audit is to confirm that the company's documentation meets requirements with commensurate with ISO 9001 standards and that day-to-day operations follow the documentation. As the auditor serves in this role, he or she must be very careful to bring an objective professional perspective to the job. Auditor's qualification. Selection of candidates for the role of an internal auditor should be made based on several factors. One of them, personal interest, qualification, work ethics. Specific minimum qualification that should guide the selection of auditors are his or her education, his or her experience towards the field, his or her personal qualities, and what are the personal attributes that person could have as an audit eligibility. Auditor's training. Specific skills for internal auditing are supported by training in knowledge and understanding of the ISO standards used or the standards used by the organization, assessment technique of questioning, evaluating, and reporting, and eventually audit management and auditing skills such as planning, organizing, communicating, and directing. What are the auditor's responsibilities? The tasks of the internal auditor include obtain and assess objective evidence fairly and remain true to the purpose of the audit without fear or favor. The selection of appropriate individuals for an auditor's role to invest in the training and time commitment should consider matching personal qualifications with an understanding of the role and the responsibilities of the auditor. Another important factor to consider is that the audit team must consist of individuals from a variety of functions. Auditors must not audit their own function or department in order to maintain objectivity. Now we will start discussion on ISO 9001 lead auditor. An ISO 9001 lead auditor training enables you to develop the necessary expertise to perform a quality management system audit by applying widely recognized audit principles procedures, and techniques. One will be able to master the audit techniques and become competent to manage an audit program, audit team, communication with customers, and conflict resolution. Knowing the role of a lead auditor, we need to understand what are his learning objectives and what are the prerequisites.
يبي شيء يعوض، يبي شيء يلهي فيه، فشنو بيسوي هالطريقة هذه؟ تجاوز زين على أساس.
When I talk about what are his learning objectives and what are his prerequisites, to explain this, I will first explain in detail about the roles and responsibilities and the learning objectives of a lead auditor. After you complete this training course, each participant will ideally be able to explain the fundamental concepts and principles of a quality management system based on ISO 9001, interpret the ISO 9001 requirements for a QMS from the perspective of an auditor, evaluate the quality management system conformity to ISO 9001 requirements in accordance with the fundamental audit concepts and principles, plan, conduct, and close an ISO 9001 compliance audit in accordance with the ISO requirements, ISO 19011 guidelines, and other best practices of auditing, and finally, manage an ISO 9001 audit program. What are the prerequisites of a lead auditor? The main requirements for participating in this training course are a fundamental understanding of the ISO 9001 requirements for a quality management system and a comprehensive knowledge of audit principles. Now we will discuss in detail about the roles and responsibilities of a lead auditor in ISO 9001. What are the key roles and responsibilities? Managing a team of internal auditors within the performance of internal audits. Appointing roles and duties to internal audit team members to ensure the success of the audit. Leading an external audit team and ensuring that audit reports are honest, accurate, impartial, and useful. Auditing organizations and determining compliance or otherwise with the respective management system. Identify organizational processes as well as identify opportunities for improvement, and opening for and closing an audit meeting and assisting with follow-up of audit. What are the key measures and targets? Common key performance indicators include percentage of the audit plan completed. These are all the key measures and targets. Count of issues found and recommendations made. Percentage of recommendations implemented on time. Hours spent per audit. Certifications held by audit team members. On the other hand, value-based KPIs, which are key process indicators, measure the effectiveness of the audit on the business. Next, in the key measures and targets, we will again continue with common key performance indicators. Some more are customer satisfaction, increased productivity and efficiency, decreased expenses, and learner operations. Ultimately, the KPIs you choose to implement must be the ones that work applicable and work properly for your organization. How to track the metrics in your audits. Incorporating metrics into the audit projects can help one to stay organized, meet project goals, and demonstrate how audits activities are aligned with company objectives. Keep in mind certain things you have to keep in mind when tracking metrics in an audit. Number one, use weekly check-ins with the management to communicate identified issues, field work status, and milestones. And number two, set a timely target to issue your final report, that is, say within 30 days of completing the audit of the field work. How to track the metrics in your audit plan. Incorporating metrics into overall audit plan and guide executive leadership in assessing audit's performance and goals, and ensure that the individual audit project metrics tie into these overall metrics as well. What are the things that an auditor should keep in mind when tracking metrics in an audit plan? Number one, for customer satisfaction results, identify the percentage of service returned and if scores are improving year over year or not. And number two, identify your percentage of risks audited based on your risk assessment. Risk assessment is very, very important nowadays towards the quality management perspective, because nowadays every organization, whosoever are going for their certifications, always try to do a risk-based analysis. Always any work that you do should ideally have a risk-based analysis. Tracking meaningful KPIs will put an audit department in a strong position to clearly measure and effectively communicate how their activities are supporting company strategy to the audit committee and senior management, showcasing audit as a partner adding value to your business, adding value to your organization. That is how an organization values or appreciates the role of an auditor. With this, I conclude module number 1. Further discussion or further learning we will have in module number 3. Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to module 3 of the e-learning session, ISO 9001-2015 and lead audit. In module 3, we are going to understand preparation, development, and conduction of the audit. That is how to prepare, develop, and conduct an audit. So let's start. First, we are going to discuss about how to start with the initial contact with the auditee. To start with an internal initial contact with the auditee, there are basically 3 steps that we have to understand. Number 1, scheduling an audit. Initial contact is made with the auditee to gather and review all the background information related to the organization. In order to prepare for an audit, the necessary documentation for the management system needs to be viewed. How is the audit plan to be made, or what exactly is the audit plan? The audit plan should be developed by the audit team leader based on the information obtained from the audit program and from the documentation provided by the auditee for the organization. what are the stages of audit? The objective, there are basically two stages of audit, the stage 1 and stage 2. The objective of stage 1 audit is to determine an organization's readiness for their stage 2 certification audit. During the stage 1, your certification body's auditor will review your management system documented information, evaluate your site-specific conditions, and have discussions with personnel in the organization as they feel towards the completion of the audit. A stage 1 audit is usually carried out over 1 or 2 days and typically occurs on site. For organizations with more than one location, the audits are usually carried out at your central function location. The stage 2 audit evaluates the implementation and effectiveness of your organization's management system. This is primarily done after the stage 1 audit has been successfully completed. During the stage 2 audit, your certification body will determine the degree of compliance with the standards requirements, that is ISO requirements, and report any non-conformances or potential non-conformances that your organization will have to correct before the certification eventually could be issued. If the stage audit is successful, your organization's management systems will be certified. The duration of the stage 2 audit is determined in accordance with the relevant ISO mandatory documents. Depending on the size and complexity of the organization, this audit can range anywhere from 1 to many days. So it depends. The duration of the audit will depend upon how many areas the auditors wants to audit, or what are the complexities in the organization, in the management system. Accordingly, this has to be discussed and decided. Document review. Audit documentation is reviewed by members of the engagement team performing the work, that is the external auditors, and might be reviewed by others as well. Auditors who are new to an engagement and review the prior year's documentation to understand the work performed as an aid in planning and performing the current engagement. Documentation review criteria includes 3 stages of focus: stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. What is stage 1? In stage 1, consideration by the lead auditor of whether there is a sufficient evidence that would enable to determine if inappropriate practices may have occurred in the organizations. Alternatively, if the practitioner is willing to acknowledge inappropriate practice, the practitioner may seek to negotiate an agreement. Stage 2, a peer review process by the audit team to determine if inappropriate practice has really occurred or not. And stage 3? Stage 3 means consideration and setting of an appropriate outcome by the determining authority. Audit plan. What exactly is an audit plan or audit planning? Audit planning is a vital area of the audit, primarily conducted at the beginning of audit process to ensure that appropriate attention is devoted to important areas. Potential problems are promptly identified, work is completed expeditiously, and work is properly coordinated. An audit plan is the specific guideline to be followed when conducting an audit. It helps the auditor obtain sufficient appropriate evidence for the circumstances based on which the audit will be actually done. The circumstances, the situations, the happenings within the organization, how the processes are running based on those. It also helps keep audit cost at a reasonable level and helps avoid misunderstandings with the client or the customer. What are the benefits of audit plan and what are the process of audit planning? That also we have to understand. Working documents. What is audit working document? Audit working papers are the documents which record during the course of audit evidence performed during auditing, internal management auditing, information systems auditing, and investigations. Audit working papers are used to support the audit work done in order to provide the assurance that the audit was performed in accordance with the relevant auditing standards as laid down in ISO 9001:2015. The audit working papers are ideally divided into two parts. The first group consists of the current file, and the second group contains the permanent file. With this, I come to a conclusion of Module 3. More discussions we will do in Module 4. Thank you very much.